Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Thanks so much for stopping in. And on tonight's episode, we are heading to the Southern Hemisphere. We're going to have a great chat with my guest tonight, who is Michael Lazarou. Michael, how you doing?
Great, Rob. Delighted to be joining you and your listeners.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming back on. You've been on the podcast before, and I really enjoyed having you on. And when I say we're heading to the Southern Hemisphere, it's the topic tonight. We're going to talk about a region in Australia, Victoria, and the wines that come from this region. But Michael's also, right dab in the middle of it. He's in Australia. You're in Melbourne, is that right?
Yes, I live in Melbourne, which is in the state of Victoria.
Yeah, so this is your backyard, so to speak. You know this fairly well.
Well, I've lived in Melbourne all my life, so I've obviously
and you're a wine guy. You're a big wine guy. I need to tell people that and we'll put your links in the description. This is going to be obviously the podcast that gets published everywhere we do. Spotify, Google, YouTube, everywhere. But also on YouTube, this will be video as well. So, but any of those locations you go to look at it, look in the description, and you'll get Michael's social media. And go check him out. Follow him especially for Australian wines, his reviews and things. He does a great job. That's kind of how I found Michael, was on Instagram. But Mike's wine lover, man. He still drinks wines from all over the world. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. Although I mainly drink Australian and most of my collection is Australian, I do like to taste wines from around the world. So I've got a very wide and varied palate.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you have to do that if you're going to, Australia has so many varieties of grapes in there now. I feel like if you're going to drink a Nebbiolo or you're going to drink a Fiano from Australia, you almost have to drink an Italian to kind of go, what's the bar? What am I measuring this against? And just see kind of how it differs and what they're doing differently in Australia.
Absolutely, because we don't have indigenous varieties like Italy or other old world producing wine producing countries. So we've obviously imported varietals from around the world. So it's great to benchmark our wines compared to the old world producers.
Yeah, so tonight's episode, Michael and I are going to dive into Victoria. He's going to kind of help shed some light on what this region is, the diversity of this region. I'll say that's the huge thing about this region, the diversity of the region. And, you just talked about so many different types of grapes that can be grown in this region, but not just grown and made into wine, done at a very high level. And I think that's important that we highlight that, a lot of people, when they think about Australia, they go, okay, yeah, you make Shiraz and you make, big cabs. No, there's a whole lot more going on in the country of Australia, but specifically tonight's conversation is going to be about Victoria and the cool things that are happening there. I do want to share that, recently, it's been a month or so ago when we decided that we were going to get together and record this episode. And shortly after that, I got invited to go to a wine dinner by the Wines of Victoria, just kind of coincidence. And it really was a huge help for me, Michael, because I was figuring out, okay, how am I going to do research? And I can do, just kind of paper research and figure things out, look up on the internet or whatever, and try to kind of get an understanding of the region. But going to this wine dinner, getting to meet producers, drink through Rieslings and Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs and, Rutherford Glen and the Muscats, these fortified wines they have. Really cool that I got the opportunity to experience Victoria before you and I have this conversation. So that was a big treat for me, and it's going to help me a lot in understanding what you're talking about tonight.
Great. Excellent. I'm glad you've had the opportunity to taste through Victorian wines, Rob.
So let's start with this. Give us a snapshot of Victoria, this region kind of in relation to Australia. Where's it located when we think about Australia? I mean, if you know where Melbourne is, you kind of have this idea of where it is, but give us kind of, the high density of wineries that are around there, because it's not a big area. And then just kind of what's the climate, what's the coastal influence and things like that for this wine region?
Sure. So Victoria is in the southwest tip of the Australian mainland. It's the southernmost state on the mainland. It's also by far the smallest state geographically. We produce 17% of the national crush, which is third most amount of wine produced of all the states in Australia. But we've also got the most wine regions. So we've got 25 GI. So GI is called is short for geographical indicators, and it's the equivalent of AVAs that you guys have in the United States. So we've got 25 GIs. So you can imagine with that amount of GIs, you're going to have a lot of variation in terms of styles, geography, terroir, varietals, etc. So Victoria has a great diversity within its offering. We have cool climate wines such as Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays. We have fuller bodied wines such as Shiraz. We also have fortified wines from the warm northeast of the state. So there's a great diversity of wine styles produced in this state. We're also very fortunate in Melbourne. We're surrounded by 3 wine regions which are within short distance of Melbourne. So we've got the Yarra Valley, Mornington Peninsula, and Macedon Ranges, what we call the Dress Circle. And about an hour from Melbourne, we've got the Geelong wine region, and Geelong's our second biggest city in the state of Victoria. So there's a great diversity of styles of wine that our
and
state
when you
produces.
talk about the diversity of styles, and you talk about these cooler climates and things, they work because you also have this diversity in microclimates, right? You have the right climate to support growing that style of grape to make those style of wines.
Absolutely. So if I look at those cool climate regions, say Mornington Peninsula, which is kind of like the Hamptons of Melbourne, it's a area where a lot of the wealthy Melburnians have holiday homes, but it's also a wine region, and it's maritime. So you get the late afternoon sea breezes. So the wine region is basically based on the coast. Cool climate, very elegant Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and also well known for being Australia's premier Pinot Gris wine region as well. Then you go further inland to the Yarra Valley, which is continental climate. It's surrounded by mountains. So obviously that's why it's called the Yarra Valley. It's a valley. And even within the Yarra Valley, there's different climatic conditions. So you've got the Upper Yarra, which is extremely cold and very hilly. And then you've got the Yarra Flats, which is a bit warmer. So the Upper Yarra produces more elegant Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and the what you call the Yarra Flats still produces Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but also produces very good Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon as well. And then you've got to the north of Melbourne.
If we talk about the Yarra Valley and we talk about some producers that people might know from this area,
Yep.
that you might
Sure.
see, one that jumps to mind to me is Giant Steps.
Yep.
Just thinking about what's available here in the States that I see that we get over here. Giant Steps,
Sure. So,
maybe Mac Forbes, Oak Ridge.
Yep. They are you've named 3 outstanding producers. Then you've got other producers such as Coldstream Hills, Maya, Mount Mary. I'm not sure if Mount Mary is distributed in the US because they're a very small producer, but extremely high quality. Yarra, Yeringberg. It goes on and on. There's the interesting thing about the Yarra Valley, Rob, is it's most well known for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but some of the greatest wines that come out of the Yarra Valley are Cabernet blends, Bordeaux blends. So in fact, the most iconic wines that come out of the Yarra Valley, or the most famous wines that come out of there, are Cabernet-based wines. So you've got Mount Mary Quintet, Yarra Yering number 1. You've got Yeringberg Cabernet blend.
So here's my
So
question for you, Michael. Are those obviously they got to be down on the floor, right? They're down on the floor of the
yes,
valley, and you
yes.
still get warm enough temperatures to get them to ripen. You know, I think about Cabernet; it really needs to have that heat to ripen it, or does it hang a little longer because it doesn't have the high temperatures that you normally get over here in the States and stuff?
Well, with climate change, it's become easier to ripen
Ah, yeah.
Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah. Um, I guess if you went back probably 20 years, you probably would have had to leave the grapes on the vines a bit longer. But now with climate change, you get more consistent ripening.
That's a great
With
point. I
with
forgot
with
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, with Cabernet Sauvignon. But look, having said that, it's very much made in, and it is very elegant Cabernet Sauvignon. It's not the Cabernet Sauvignon that you would get from, say, the Napa Valley.
So it's not big, it's not over extracted, it's not jammy. It's going to have some finesse, some kind of class and elegance to it.
Absolutely,
Okay.
beautifully refined Cabernet Sauvignon, but capable of aging decades.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. Let's jump back to the Mornington Peninsula and talk about some producers we might see here in the States. You know, as people hear us talk about these Burgundian kind of varieties with Pinot Noir, always very popular around the world, right? Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. And if we can find some other places to try them from, I think that's great. And Australia being one of those places. Um, 10 minutes by tractor is good,
Yep,
pretty
very
good
good
brand.
producer. Yep,
Stonier.
yes.
Who else would you think of over there?
So you've got Paringa Estate.
Okay.
I would imagine they would have distribution in the US. Yabby Lake, they would definitely have distribution in the US.
Okay.
Main Ridge Estate, Muraduck Estate, Hurley Vineyard. Um, the list goes on and on.
Okay.
But
Well, there's a few
um,
for us to seek out and try anyway.
sure,
Well, let's jump
absolutely.
to the next region I have is Heathcote. What do you think about this region?
Okay, so Heathcote is in central Victoria. It's about probably an hour to an hour and a half from Melbourne. It's quite a long region from north to south. It's about 90 kilometres from north to south. Um, it's basically warm climate, generally speaking. The centre and the north is warmer than the south because the south borders Macedon Ranges, which is cool climate. So the region is famous for full-bodied Shiraz. Um, so they're obviously quite big, traditionally been big and rich. Um,
And they have the other
uh,
Rhone varieties there, don't they? Grenache and some
y-
Mourvedre.
Yeah, so they've got Grenache and Mourvedre, and more recently some Italian varietals. So Fiano, they've got some Sangiovese, some a little bit of Nebbiolo is grown in Heathcote, um, but again, there's some even diversity within that region. The south is the wines tend to be a bit more elegant compared to the centre and the north of that particular region. But that's Victoria's most famous region for Shiraz.
Yeah, and you know, as people are listening to this, they're starting to catch on when we talk about Shiraz and Cab and Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and now we're talking about um, uh, Grenache and Mourvedre and Syrah. All there's this diversity that we mentioned early on in this region. You get so many different grapes made so well in kind of a small region, but like you said, 25 different GIs. So. Um,
Absolutely.
let's jump over real quick to Beechworth. What do you think about this region?
I
What do we
love I
get?
love Beechworth. Yeah,
Okay.
so Beechworth is northeast of Victoria. It's got some altitude. Not a large region in terms of number of producers that are there, but it's a region that's very much specialises on high quality production of wine. So Beechworth
Chardonnays
is
are big,
most
right?
Yeah, Beechworth is a truly great region for Chardonnay. Also produces very good Syrah, and increasingly is building a reputation with Nebbiolo. So to name a few very good producers in Beechworth, you've got producers such as Gioconda, which many people view as possibly Australia's greatest Chardonnay producer. Um, Sorenberg, again, great Chardonnay producer. Savater Castagna produces great Syrah. And Fighting Gully Road is a producer that specializes in Italian varietals, even though they make very good Chardonnay as well.
Yeah, and what I'm doing is I'm going through some of the regions that I'm just highlighting what I think are the bigger ones that I've kind of seen and known a little bit, and
Yeah,
then you can fill in the gaps when we're done if I've missed something, because I'm sure you're going to go, Rob, you're leaving out a gem, and so when I say I'm done, you can fill in where I've missed one, Michael. But next
sure.
for me was going to be the Macedon Ranges.
Okay, this is one that is very near and dear to my heart because I live actually very close to the Macedon Ranges. The Macedon Ranges is the coldest wine region in mainland Australia, so it's very hilly. It's got a lot of altitude, up to 1,000 meters. Um, very cool climate, production of wine. So I've actually got a Macedon Ranges wine here. That's
Oh, nice.
Curly Flat, one of the best producers from the Macedon Ranges. You've also got Bindi. Oh, in fact, I went to pick up some wine from Bindi yesterday. So it's a wine that initially got its reputation with sparkling wine because it's obviously very cold in the Macedon Ranges, but increasingly so has been gaining a reputation for very high quality Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Yeah,
Um,
and you took it from me. The two producers I had made notes of was the Bindi and the Curly Flat. So those are two that
yeah,
are outstanding.
yeah. So
So
you've also got some other very good producers such as Cobor Ridge, make fantastic Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and beautiful Syrah. Domaine Epis, Place of Changing Winds, Willamie, and Lyons Will Estate are some of the other top quality producers for the Macedon Range. So the Macedon Ranges is to the north of Melbourne. Um, and yeah, as I said, I live very close to the Macedon Ranges, so it's a region that's near and dear to my heart, but is producing some very high quality, cool climate wines.
well, you had mentioned sparkling. Is this made in the traditional method, or are they using tank fermentation, or what are they doing with this?
No, so if you're looking at say the Macedon Ranges, pretty much everyone is producing in the traditional method.
Okay,
Um,
very cool.
because it's such a cold region. Um, I was looking at some climate data, and Messenger Ranges, in terms of climate, is very similar to Burgundy.
Oh, really?
It's actually that cold. Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually quite cold. Does it? It can get warmish, but at night it's freezing cold. Like there's a massive diurnal difference even in summer, in the Macedon Ranges.
And that
And there's
difference, are
new.
we talking 50, 60 degrees, or?
Well, we have centigrades, not
Oh,
Fahrenheit.
yeah, that's right. So
uh,
if you're
no,
up around 40, 35, 40 for a high during the day, what do you at night?
well, it could, yeah, at night it could get down to sort of 10, 15 degrees,
Oh,
even
wow.
even
Okay.
in warm weather. I mean, it can be routinely 1, 2, 3 degrees uh, at night in the Macedon Ranges.
Yeah. Very
Because
cool.
it's so high. And in fact, at its highest peak is Mount Macedon, and Mount Macedon in winter snows.
Really?
Yeah.
And you guys just had Crush, didn't you? So people hear me say we're going to go to the southern hemisphere at the beginning of this. I want them to realize you guys are in the opposite kind of seasons that we are. You guys are just coming out of summer and getting ready to go into winter.
Yeah, so the first region in Australia that picks its scope is the Hunter Valley in New South Wales, simply because it's very warm and it's humid. So you've got to get your grapes off before they start. The grapes become too ripe,
Yeah.
um, and uh, and then you've got places like the Macedon Ranges, which have only finished harvest, you know, in the last month or so.
Yeah, yeah. We're here in the States, we're going, hey, the buds are starting to break. We're starting to see the vines come to life, because spring's here. But yeah, you guys are flipping 180 degrees. All right, next, let's go to the region that in my short time, diving into Victoria and exploring the wine regions, because I'm a lover of fortified wines, this region has stolen a piece of my heart pretty quickly. This is Rutherglen.
Yep, yep. I again, another region I'm very fond of. It's in the northeast of Victoria. It's on the border with New South Wales, and it borders the Murray River. A region that's very much warm climate, and it's famous for fortified wines. So, Topake and Muscat, which are made with a Solera system. The region is full of wineries that are multi-generational family-owned wineries. A lot of producers established their wineries in the late 1800s. So you've got some well-known producers such as Morris, Campbell's, Stanton and Colleen, Buller, etc. A region that's very much seen in Australia as our greatest fortified wine region. Very, very high quality fortified wines. Absolutely world class.
Now, the Topake it's not fortified though, is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it
Yep.
is fortified. Okay, because
Yeah,
when I
it's
think of
fortified just like Muscat is.
it is okay, because when I think about
Yep.
Tokai, and that's kind of where that comes from, right?
Yep.
I know that our the
Yep.
Tokais I've had haven't been fortified. They're more in the think of the Sauternes type of style.
Yeah. No, these are more like in the style of ports from Portugal.
Okay, very cool. I did not realize that. Okay,
Yeah.
I haven't
So
had one of
so
those yet.
very very rich, sweet fortified wine. So Topake is made from the Muscadel grape,
Okay,
whereas the Muscat is made from the white Muscat grape.
okay. Very cool. Yeah, that region, because like I said, I just love the fortified wines. I was just blown away at how delicious the quality. And I'm talking about, not very expensive. Retail, they were telling me $25 a bottle. I mean, this was great for me. I was like, man, this is outstanding. More people need to learn about this. And I'll be honest and tell you, I actually went to after that dinner and class that I got to attend, I went to a local store here, and I don't know if you're familiar. Here in the United States, we got these big box stores called Total Wine.
Yeah.
Huge,
Okay. Yep.
huge stores that carry, huge selections of wine, whiskeys, whatever.
Yep.
And I thought, they may have it. Actually, a friend of mine, Bob Polinsky, said, hey, they should
Yes.
have it at Total Wine. And I went down there, and the guy looked it up for me, and he said, nope, we've discontinued this item because it just never sold. And I went, okay, it didn't sell because people don't know it. And that's part of the reason I want to have this conversation with you, Michael. And I like, talking about Australian wines, because I just don't think, for the quality that's coming out of Australia with the wines they're making, they're not getting enough pub. They're not getting enough love. People need to be more aware. People need to explore a little bit more about what's going on in Australia, because the wines are absolutely beautiful and still at a price point that I think is a really good value.
Yeah, I think we discussed it in our last episode, Rob. Unfortunately, Australia has an image problem in the US. Most US consumers associate Australia with either cheap and cheerful wines such as Yellowtail, or big full-bodied Shirazes that come out of our warm climate regions in South Australia. And Australia's wine offering is so much more than those two categories. We produce world class wines across the breadth across Australia, and we're a continent, so we've got a lot of variability within our climate and terroir. And we've got a great diversity within our wine offering, and that's very much the case in my state of Victoria.
Yeah.
Which we've already touched on. We've got cool climate wines, and we've also got medium-bodied wines, and we've got full-bodied Shiraz wines that come out of Heathcote, for example. So there's great variability within the styles that we offer to consumers.
Yeah, and we're not going to dive into it a lot on this episode because we're really focusing on Victoria. But within Victoria, this could be a tease for a future episode with Michael.
Sure.
There's some great Italian varietals in Australia in general, but also I believe it was Little Italy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. It's in Kings Valley, this little kind of
Yeah,
hidden
yeah,
Italian kind of
yeah.
village.
Yeah, so the King Valley is a wine region again in northeast Victoria, with a coolish climate, that's famous for Italian varietals, and the reason for that is the region was, or most of the region is the producers um, are people with Italian backgrounds who were originally tobacco farmers, in the 50s, 60s, and 1970s. And when the Australian government basically banned production of tobacco in Australia, they switched their production to growing of grapes and winemaking. So you've got some very famous producers in the King Valley, from Italian background. So we're talking, for example, Pizzini, Chris Mont, etc. They're two very good producers that come to mind, which have Italian backgrounds, and obviously producing wine made from Italian varietals. So very famous for production of Prosecco. That's obviously very popular in Italy, but producing very good Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, Fiano, Sagrantino, even obscure varietals such as Verduzzo, Arnis.
Wow, I didn't
Um,
realize all of those were right there in Kings Valley.
yeah, Tirol de Go.
Okay.
Um, so just a very wide variety of Italian varietals, and yeah, King Valley very much is known as the home of Italian varietals, but also um, another region that borders the King Valley is the Alpine Valleys, and that's also very well known for Italian varietals
Yeah.
as well.
That was one thing that struck me is seeing all the Italian varietals that are doing so well in Australia. So little tease that might be a future episode for me and you to have just to talk about all the different regions and what they're doing with those Italian varietals. But we talked about as we went through these regions, some producers that you might find. I do want to also mention, there's some good importers that you could look for as well. When we talk about Vine Street Imports, Little Peacock, Hudson Wine Brokers, these are three that I know of that bring a lot of Australian wines into the United States. So you may want to look on their website, see where they're distributing, see if they're in your market somewhere, and you can find these Australian wines through them as well.
It's
All right.
good to know.
Let's do this, Michael. We went through the kind of what I thought were these, standout kind of regions and talked about some producers, but tell me what you think are some maybe hidden gems, some things that maybe I missed that you'd like to shed a little light on. Tell me if there's any regions that we didn't talk about or producers that are doing some things that are kind of this emerging kind of producer, emerging talent with, wine. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Well, I very briefly touched on Alpine Valleys just then. Alpine Valleys, obviously, as you can imagine, is a mountainous region in the northeast of Victoria. Um, there's a producer I want to call out, Billy Button. They produce 32 different wines, and nearly all of those are from Italian varietals. So they produce wines from obscure grapes such as Malvasia, Schioppettino. What else do they produce that's quite obscure? Obviously, they produce the well-known grape varietals such as Sangiovese, Nebbiolo. Very, very innovative producer. That region also produces very good Tempranillo. In fact, probably Australia's best Tempranillo is produced in that region by a producer called Mayford. Um, very, very innovative region, the Alpine Valleys. I'm just trying to think of some other regions
Let me
that
throw a
we.
couple of wine or winemakers or something out at you and see what you think. What
Yeah.
about Memento Mori from the Gippsland?
Gippsland. Yeah, Gippsland is another region, a cool climate wine region, very much focused on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It's a very, very big wine region. In fact, it's probably the biggest wine region in the state of Victoria geographically. It covers most of the southeast and east of the state. A great deal of diversity in terms of climate. So South Gippsland, very much cool climate, producing Burgundian style of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. The east of the state, a little bit warmer, where you may find you'll still find Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but you'll also find some Shiraz or Syrah,
Okay.
and also, home to also a very, very good producer of Chardonnay called Patrick Sullivan, who may or may not distribute in the US. Um, Home to a very good Pinot Noir producer called William Downey, who used to work in the Yarra Valley. That's another region that reminds me of Masson Ranges, in that there was, if we went back 10 years ago, there would be maybe 10 good producers, but you've had a lot of producers emerge over the last 5 to 10 years, just like the Masson Ranges. Very innovative, but very high quality Pinot Noir and Chardonnay Gippsland. Yeah, it's a region that produces very, very good wines.
Do you know anything about Josh Cooper wines?
Joshua Cooper, yes, I do actually. Joshua Cooper's parents own Cobor Ridge in the Macedon Ranges. Joshua Cooper is a very innovative winemaker. He, up to recently, didn't own any vineyards. He recently purchased a vineyard in the Macedon Ranges. He produces a great diversity of varietals. So he sources a lot of fruit from different vineyards within Victoria. Obviously, growing up in the Macedon Ranges, he produces outstanding Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Do you like
But
his
he's
wines?
also,
Do you like what he's doing?
I think he's an outstanding winemaker, Joshua
Because
Cooper.
he's kind of this
Yeah,
young gun, right? He's kind of doing some stuff.
absolutely. So he reminds me of Owen Ladder from Ladder Wines as well.
Okay.
So in fact, I think those two guys are.
Is that Ladavino?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So those two guys, in fact, I'm told are friends. In fact,
Okay.
so they're producing some very innovative styles of wines. So Joshua Cooper is producing some outstanding Cabernet Sauvignon from regions such as Pyrenees, Bendigo, which is central Victoria, some old vineyards. So he's buying fruit and making them himself under his own label. He's also producing wine from the Sunbury wine region, which borders Macedon Ranges. He's a very much a young gun and doing some very innovative stuff. I'm really fond of his wines, just like I am of Owen Ladder. So our Owen Ladder, his father established a winery in Ballarat, which is again another cold region of Victoria. It's a provincial city of about 120,000 people, and he's producing like skin contact wines, some orange wines, extended skin contact wines. Yeah, he's doing some really, really interesting stuff.
Let me ask you about another one. I don't know if you mentioned this one, but maybe you did and I missed it. But I think it's one that you probably like, which is the Fighting Gully Road.
Yes, Fighting Gully Road. That's a winery owned by Mark Walpole. Mark Walpole is one of Australia's greatest viticulturalists. He's also a very, very good winemaker. They produce outstanding Chardonnay, and very, very good Shiraz. But Mark Walpole is known for his expertise with Italian varietals. So he's producing a lot of Italian varietals under his brand, but he's also providing viticultural consulting services to a lot of other brands in that region and in that northeast general region of Victoria. So that's another brand to look out for if there's distribution of that brand in the US.
What about last one I'll throw at you, Michael? Cobalt Ridge?
Yeah, Cobalt Ridge is owned by Joshua Cooper's parents.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yep. The mother is Nell. I can't remember the father's name. Alan and Nell Cooper. I went out to the winery many years ago. So they are known for producing outstanding Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. The vineyard is actually in a bit of a valley so it's got its own microclimate within the region. It's in a very pretty spot. Also produce outstanding Syrah with some Viognier in there, and also producing the Italian grape Lagrein, which is from the north. I think it's from Alto Adige. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. Lagrein. So they produce one of Australia's greatest Lagrein wines as well, which is really, really interesting. So another outstanding producer, Cobalt Ridge. They've been established for probably 30 years. So the apple doesn't fall very far from a tree. They produce outstanding wines, and their son Joshua Cooper is producing outstanding wines as well.
Yeah, that's what's cool about Australia, and I think in most quality wine producing regions, countries, just the continuous innovation and creativity and evolving to do cool things, and that's why I wanted to mention kind of Joshua Cooper wines and Latavino and what they're doing, because it's really cool to see, and it's really fun to drink and try these things. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit, but I do want to hit you up, Michael, because I've got to be honest. When we think about bottles and bites, I'm big into food, wine, whiskeys, coffees, all this kind of stuff. When I think Australia, there's not a particular type of food that if I'm going French, I can settle in on some styles of food. If I'm going Italian, Spanish, Asian, when I think Australian, I'm kind of struggling to go, what do we do? So talk to me a little bit about the wines that we all know, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and all these things. What do you like to pair? What kind of foods do you like to have when you're enjoying these wines?
So I guess I'm probably a bit of a traditionalist. Australia, it doesn't have its own indigenous cuisine.
Okay.
A bit like a little bit like the US. We've borrowed our cuisine from the various other countries. So Australia, like the US, is a country of migrants.
I would guess that you have a big Asian influence.
Yeah, well, we've got a little Asian influence, but if we go back to the 1950s and 60s, we had mass migration of Europeans, so Italians and Greeks.
Okay.
So our cuisine is very much influenced by our migrants that have come into the country. So Italian cuisine is very popular in Australia. Greek cuisine is popular. Asian cuisine is popular, and more recently we've had a wave of Indian migration as well. But I kind of like traditional food pairing. So if I'm having Shiraz, I like a nice juicy steak, for example. If I'm having Cabernet Sauvignon, I like to pair that with lamb. Chardonnay, I like Chardonnay with seafood. Chicken, that sort of thing. If I'm having Riesling, I like to have
very similar to the States.
I like to have that with white flesh fish. Italian varietals, I really like to have them with Italian food.
Yeah.
And as we've
Let
mentioned
me ask you this about
earlier,
Riesling. We know that Rieslings can have this range of very dry to very sweet.
yes,
Does the Australian, are the Australian Rieslings that are made, do they have that same kind of range? So that, I always think you mentioned Riesling, and me and my wife, when we're going to go have some spicy Asian food,
yes,
some a Riesling with a little residual sugar is nice to go with that. Is that something you see over there as well with your Riesling?
yes, yes, very much so. But Australia's traditionally mainly produce bone dry Rieslings,
That's what I
but
thought.
yeah, but off dry Rieslings become a bit of a trend, or trendier over the last probably 5 to 10 years. So you're increasingly seeing more Rieslings with some residual sugar. Um, so one producer I want to call out in Victoria who produces outstanding region is Crawford River, um, in the Henty wine region of southwest Victoria. They are one of Australia's greatest Riesling producers. Another one I want to call out is Seppelt Drumborg Riesling. So Seppelt comes from the Drumborg Riesling, again in the Henty wine region, and the Drumborg vineyard is one of Australia's coldest vineyards. It's close to the ocean, and it gets sea breezes, and it's incredibly cold out there.
Do
Very,
you
very
taste
cold.
the salinity on the wine when you get those?
A little bit.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it would. You taste as much salinity say as you would with say a Greek Acertigo, where
Okay.
you can really taste that minerality,
Yeah.
that the salt. I mean, I mean, these two Rieslings I've mentioned have got a very mineral driven, and have got beautiful acidity. Um, but so they're two really good. And there's the third one I want to touch on is Granite Hills from Macedon Ranges, obviously cool climate region. That's a producer that's really well known for its Riesling. Again, a very mineral driven Riesling. But some of our Riesling producers are producing some of their Rieslings with some residual sugar. But traditionally, our Rieslings are bone dry.
Okay. That's what I thought. I thought most Rieslings produced all over Australia are bone dry for the most part. But I'm glad
Yeah.
to hear that's changing because too many times people have this opinion of residual sugar in wine that it's a really bad thing. It's not. It's when it's done right and it's in balance and it works for what the wine is. With the acidity in the wine, the sugar sometimes helps. So it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's wanted and craved, and we like sometimes a little residual sugar in our wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I probably didn't touch on before, you said some interesting things, Rob. Maybe before we finish up, there's a producer in Central Victoria called Tabilk. They make they're again a multi generational producer. They've got the world's largest plantings of Marsan, which is a own
Oh
varietal.
yeah.
They they produce a Marsan, which I've got. That's actually, can you see that rich
Yeah.
color?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a 2012 Marsan.
Oh,
Um,
it can age that long.
yeah, it can age decades, Marsan. So when it's young, it's quite citrus driven, fresh, lovely, crisp acidity. And as it ages, it takes on these toastier, sort of richer flavors. But the one flavor that stands out is honeysuckle.
Okay.
Um, so it's very much like Riesling that in that it can age for decades, and Tabilk is very much famous for its Marsan, um, which I'm sure would be sold in the US because they're a decent sized producer, um, and that's quite an iconic wine, the Tabilk Marsan, and I wanted to call that out.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's. Do you have any idea if it's distributed here in the states? Is that
I,
something we can
I
find?
look, I would be fairly confident it would be. I'm not
Okay,
sure who
cool.
the distributor would be,
Yeah.
but I would be confident they would be because they do distribute internationally.
Okay. I'm going to search them out. That would be one that would be not only fun but interesting to try as well. And you know, who knows? Maybe I can find one with a little age on it to compare
Yep.
it to.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
let's do this as we finish up, Michael. Um, if you know this is your backyard, this is your baby, Victoria, the wines from Victoria. If people listening were going to go, okay, Mike, I need a flight of wines. I need 4 or 5 wines that would be a great representation for somebody drinking through Victoria first time to get this kind of impression of the wines and the terroir and what they offer and the winemakers, how they're making their wine. Give me a flight of wines that you would, you know, tell our listeners that if you can get this flight, you're going to be stunned with what you can get from Victoria.
Sure. Do you want me to call out individual ones or more of varietals?
I'm going to let you make that call. If you know that they're distributed here in the States, then you want to call them out, call them out. But yeah, up to you.
That's okay because I'm not 100% sure on the distribution. I'll just
Okay.
probably call out the varietals. So if we're looking at whites, if you want to sort of go left the field, I would start with a Fiano. So Victoria produces very good Fiano. Then you're looking at traditional white varieties such as Riesling, obviously beautiful with, as you said, Asian food. Outstanding Chardonnay, like absolutely world-class Chardonnay. Um, that they're the three sort of white varietals that really comes to mind. I mean, we're also producing skin contact whites as well.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to try those out as well, orange wines, that sort of thing. And then you're looking at reds, obviously Pinot Noir from great regions such as Yarra Valley, Mornington Peninsula, Macedon Ranges, Geelong. Then you're looking at our traditional reds such as Cabernet Sauvignon. Great, really, really refined Cabernet Sauvignon from the Yarra Valley in a elegant style. Shiraz, cool climate, spicy Shiraz from places such as the Yarra Valley, the Grampians, the Pyrenees, Heathcote, obviously.
That's the thing
And
for
then
me. I want to try a GSM blend. I'm assuming you all make those from
absolutely,
Heathcote. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, GSM blends, and then obviously the fortifieds, Rob, as you touched on from Rutherglen, for producers such as Morris, Campbell's, Stanton and Colleen, Buller, just world class fortified wines
Yeah.
in
And
that sort of port style.
yeah, you say port. Can I tell you that it reminded me more of a Madeira?
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
it just blew me away. And I'm a bigger fan of Madeira than I am port, so maybe it's more of a psychological thing with me because I liked those Rutherglens so much. But uh, such I keep harping on it, Michael. Such a standout to me. Those wines blew me away. So if you're into fortified wines at all, you definitely need to seek out and find a muscat from Rutherglen because beautiful, beautiful wines.
And in fact, those muskets from Rutherglen have a classification, Rob. So at the base level, you've got Rutherglen musket. Then you've got which is based on age. So 3 to 5 years is Rutherglen age. 3 to 5 years Rutherglen musket. Classic Rutherglen musket is 7 to 10 years. Grand Rutherglen musket is 11 to 19 years, and rare is in excess of 20 years. So there's actually a classification system for muskets produced in Rutherglen. But there's also a neighbouring region, smaller region that produces very good fortified wines called Glenrowan in a
Okay.
similar style, but not as famous as Rutherglen.
Okay.
So, I mean, within those examples, there's something for everyone to choose from.
Yeah. I guess the bottom line would be, go to your wine shop, get 3 or 4 bottles from Victoria, go home, sip them, taste them. And that's kind of a call out to our listeners, hit us up on social media. You'll see our links. You'll see Mike's in there as well. try a wine from Victoria and hit us up on social media. Let us know what you think about it. We'd love to hear that feedback and what you're trying, what you're drinking, what kind of caught your interest in listening to this. Um, Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, if your viewers want to reach out to me directly through my Instagram page, Wine by Michael, I'm happy to answer any questions that your listeners or viewers
Awesome.
have. So if they want to send me a DM and ask me questions about the wines of Victoria or the wines of Australia, I'm always open to a chat with your viewers and listeners.
That's awesome. That's very nice for you to do that. Absolutely. Appreciate that. Let's finish up with this, Michael. Um, I got to think that if you're going to travel to a wine region and you've decided on Australia, the continent of Australia, the country of Australia, Melbourne's got to be a pretty good place to kind of make your home base and then be able from Melbourne to be able to go out to all these regions. I mean, that sounds like it would be a really good trip for exploring Australia, but also at the same time getting in this really great wine trip as well.
Absolutely. So Melbourne's the second largest city in Australia with a population of 5.1 million. So it's a large city, very, very cosmopolitan city, very dynamic city, city I was born in. So obviously I love Melbourne. But the good thing about coming to Melbourne, you can base yourself in Melbourne and travel to these wine regions that are nearby. So Yarra Valley's only an hour east of Melbourne. The Mornington Peninsula is again an hour southeast of Melbourne. You've got the Masson Ranges about an hour north of Melbourne. So you've got these three high quality wine regions that are within easy access of Melbourne. And then you've got Geelong, which is Victoria's second largest city, which is again a bit over an hour from Melbourne. So you can also explore the wines of the Geelong wine region, which is also producing high quality Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Shiraz. And it's got its own, Geelong's got kind of two sub-regions. You've got the Moorabool Valley, which is more continental, although it's got a slight maritime influence. And you've got the Bellarine Peninsula, which is very much maritime influence, like the Mornington Peninsula. So you've got just there. You've got four wine regions which are within easy access of Melbourne.
And so, if you were coming to Melbourne, great city, I'm going to assume you have some great restaurants, some other nightlife or other activities. What are some other things around the area that, if somebody, let's just say from the United States, was going to make a trip to Australia, what would be a two or three things they should do or try or visit, see while they're in that area, whether it be in Melbourne or in one of the regions close by?
Sure. So Melbourne, we've got some great restaurants. We've got world-class coffee, probably amongst the best coffee capitals of the world.
Okay, I did not know
because
that, Michael. I didn't know that.
Absolutely, Melbourne is known as Australia's coffee capital. We're obsessed with coffee, Melbourne.
Are you obsessed with coffee?
I do like coffee very much.
Okay, all right. We have another thing in common.
Yeah, yeah, and Melbourne is famous for its coffee. We've got great theatres. So you've obviously New York, you've got Broadway. Melbourne's famous for its theatres.
Let me ask you this, Michael. Any chance we see a kangaroo?
You're not likely to see kangaroo. No, you'll see kangaroos. There's no doubt. You'll see kangaroos in the very outer, suburbs that are on the outer edge of Melbourne.
But I mean, when you leave and you go up an hour north, an hour east to these wine regions, we're going to see kangaroos.
You will absolutely see kangaroos.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you will. Okay. You will see kangaroos. There's no question about that.
Because I mean, that's if you're going to Australia, as an American, I'm going. I better see a kangaroo.
Well, you can just go to Melbourne Zoo and you'll see plenty of kangaroos.
I want to see them out in the wild, right? That's the whole. I call it the wild. Are they? They're not approachable. You stay away from them.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Pretty much. I probably wouldn't be approaching a kangaroo in case it jumps towards you.
Yeah.
but you also likely see a lot of dead kangaroos on the road. Kangaroos don't have very good eyesight at night, so they very often collide with cars and trucks.
Kind of like our deer here in the States. You get that a
Yeah.
lot with deer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But just further on Melbourne, we've got a river. You can take a river cruise.
Oh, very cool.
National Gallery of Victoria has some great artwork. We've got a famous painting by Pablo Picasso, The Weeping Woman. We've got some other artwork by some other Italian masters.
Tell me this again, Bottles and Bites. We cover food, wine, whiskey, Michael. Are there some distilleries? I heard there's some distilleries popping up, making some whiskeys and stuff over there.
Yep. So we've got some whiskies actually based in the city of Melbourne. One that comes to mind is Starwood. We're also gin has become very popular. So we've got a lot of gin distilleries, both in Melbourne and in rural areas. Gin's become very popular. I think it has globally, really.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind, which is actually Yarra Valley based, is Four Pillars.
Okay. So a lot to do. If you're going to come visit, I mean, if it's a trip where you're planning on 2 weeks, guaranteed you're not going to get bored in a couple of days. You're going to stay pretty busy. You're going to have all kinds of activities, fun things, sights to see, and of course, some fantastic wine to drink.
Absolutely. There's so much to do both within Melbourne and within our various regions within Victoria. So, come on down.
Yeah. Mike, man, I always enjoy our conversations. I want to thank you again for coming on. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed the chat. And as always, I learned a little more about, Australian wines and this time being specific to Victoria. It's been great. I really appreciate you coming on.
And thanks very much, Rob, for providing me with the opportunity to talk about the wines of Victoria. And I encourage your listeners to seek out our wines.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike will be back on the show for future episodes. I got to say, Mike, you're probably my Australian guy now, if you're okay with that.
More than happy to be your Australian guy and talk about all things Australian wine, because it's something I'm very passionate about.
Absolutely. And I know everybody can tell that by hearing you talk about it. So, all right, everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of Bottles and Bites Without Borders. And we can't wait to hear you on the next one. Talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Rob.